So let us jump in. Um, I think I have met some of you that will be on this call, but for anybody who I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, my name is Nicola Beck. I have worked in talent acquisition and leadership for about 20 years. To be honest, it's a bit over 20 years, but I'll just keep that number for myself. So the work that I have done previously is across recruitment agency world, executive search, and then later on I moved to do talent acquisition, where I led that at Shell Hoop Group, which is one of the region's largest luxury retail companies, and then PwC Middle East, which is one of the big four. I am definitely a lifelong geek and happy to own that. So I studied psychology at undergrad, also at master's level, done my CIPD fellowship, which is the HR professional qualification, mental health first aid, and I'm now also studying to be a psychotherapist. Having left kind of corporate about a year ago, today I'm working in a career development coaching capacity. So that is helping people move up or out, depending on what they are looking to do. I also tutor CIPD still with PwC Academy, and I'm a coach partner for Asadi Business School, which is one of the top business schools in the globe. I think they're number 10 at the moment. And at this point in my career, at this age, I would estimate I have interviewed over 5,000 people, which is a lot, but I am hoping that's sort of going to help with the conversation that we are having today. And if you just allow me to hide this, I think I will do that. Okay, so why are we here? I ran a survey about a month ago and I asked candidates, what do you struggle with the most about interviews? And then I thought, let me just check that with the recruiters. So I ran the same survey and I asked recruiters, what do you think candidates struggle with the most at interview? And luckily, everyone said the same thing. And the thing that people struggle with the most is how to sell their experience. So, how to talk about what they're doing in the right way. Interviews are really high stakes events, and we don't often get the chance to learn that skill. And it is a skill, isn't it, to interview effectively, unless we're actually in an interview. And yet these things can be hugely life-changing. So I wanted to put this together. It's going to be 30 minutes of as much as I can possibly cram in to try and help out. And then later on, I've got an option if you want to look at this in a little bit more depth. Okay. So let's dive in. I promise that this presentation or lesson is not just going to be loads of pictures of random things, but the reason I put this up here, and this is hopefully going to be the most significant change that you can do, is to flip your perspective. So interviews should not be about you trying to convince me to take you on for a job. Yes, that is part of it. But I want you to start to think slightly differently about interviews and put yourself in the shoes of the recruiter, of the hiring manager, of the company. So you need to reverse engineer it based on what they're looking for. So what is this JD really all about? What are their business challenges? What's this manager really actually looking for? And if you can make that switch, this is where I've seen people have great success and they go from struggling with, I don't really know what to do in this interview and I don't know where I'm going wrong, to really understanding how to build meaningful conversations and landing job offers. So try and put yourself in the shoes of the people that you are speaking to. So with all these 5,000 interviews that I've done, and a career in talent acquisition and being quite plugged into what's going on, I've boiled it down to these three things that I'm going to cover today with you that you can maybe do differently moving forwards. And these are all around what are the interviewers looking for? So you can put yourself in their shoes and really understand what it is that you need to do based on their expectations. So the first thing that we're looking for is, can you do the job? Makes sense, right? We have a job, we need to know if you can do it. The second thing is then around, do you fit the actual spec? And that's the sort of housekeeping bit, and I'll come and explain that to you in a second. And then finally, can they work with you? That might be a very critical part. So, section one, can you do the job? This is all about you. This is about your story. So, the interviewer is wanting to understand from you, can you do what we've got going on? The first step for this is their job description. Grab your old school highlighter if you're like me, print it off and put it in ChatGPT and highlight exactly what it is that they are talking about. Those key skills, those key competencies, the requirements as well. Then we're looking to see if you've done our job before, can you do it again? So I would put all of those things we just talked about in a little table, and I would write your experience, so your skills, maybe your qualifications, projects, languages, etc., next to the things that they are looking for. The next thing you can have a think about is this: how can you move their needle? So most roles that are being recruited for a reason. It's to do something, solve something, help something. And I would start here. Write down the answers to these key questions at some point before you do an interview. One is, what is your value proposition aligned to this job description? Now, if you don't know your value proposition, you're going to need to start there. And there is a post somewhere on my LinkedIn profile that will tell you exactly how to put that together. It's really important because you're also going to weave that through any touch points, your CV, your LinkedIn, your networking conversations, and of course, your interviews. So value proposition is really important. Secondly, is how can you differentiate yourself versus other candidates? So have a think about some of those things that you have done, maybe different to others, that will help this company move their needle on the business results they want. And then finally, write down what you are going to bring to that company. So if they hire you, what do they get? And also the reverse of that. So if they don't hire you, what are they going to miss out on? So this starts to get you a bit aligned to why you're the best person for that job. And then finally, and this was the thing that most people asked in the registration details, was how to structure our answers. What are the techniques to effectively communicate? And I'm going to talk to you about STAR. Now, you might be saying to me, I've seen it, I've already seen STAR, but this is a revised STAR. It's a slightly new one. And although many people know this, not many people execute it. So we train managers to make sure they get all these pieces of information from an answer. And so therefore, that's how you should prepare your own answers. So let's look at it, and I will give you an example just so that it makes sense. I call this the humble brag. So I love STAR because it allows you to structure information about you that's confident and not arrogant. So here's how you do it. So first of all, you want to start with the situation. Everyone always forgets this. So this is setting out your stall. It's giving me the bigger picture. It's the business context and what's happening. So for example, what you might want to start off here, I'm just going to give you a sort of invented example, is saying, well, we had a situation at work. Many of our stores were not doing well. We were seeing the profits drop, people were leaving, and the customers were really unsatisfied. And this was new for us. We're a regional company. We're used to being very successful, but this was something that we had to address. So it's the bigger picture. You're sharing the context and what's happening. The next part of STAR then is to look at the task. So what is it that I was actually trying to solve for here? So in the example I gave you, the task there was really just to understand and figure out what was happening with our stores, with our store leaders, with our customers. I had a very limited budget and I had no time to do it because the business wanted answers. Next, we shift into action. So here, this is what everybody jumps to this one. Everybody goes straight to action. What you want to do here is tell them what you specifically did to address these problems and sort of get on to the results. So in the example I gave you, I might say something like, knowing that the business was suffering, what I decided to do was put together a task force. We went out, we met with all of the leadership of the stores, and we understood from them their feedback on what was happening. We surveyed many customers to understand their feedback. So there you can start to see the actions I was taking. So I went out into the stores, spoke to them, and did a survey. And then we get into the juicy bit, right? The result. And again, I think people often forget this. So what happened, the so what of your actions. So in my example, I might say what we discovered was that our people didn't feel fully trained on our products to talk to the customers. So what I did was design a training course and some product upskilling that we rolled out across everybody in a very, very quick time. And what we saw was that actually customers were way more satisfied, business results went up by 5%, and in fact, attrition was reduced. Right, tick, 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 if that's what you're looking for. Now they reflect. This is a new one. Maybe you've seen it with this, maybe you haven't. Again, I think sharing a reflection is a very clever way to differentiate yourself from your competition because it allows you the opportunity to talk about extras without being asked. So here you can demonstrate EQ, CQ, empathy, or even just a continuous improvement mindset. So what you should try and do is tag on to the end of your answers what you've learned. What's your takeaways? What would you do differently next time? And in the example that I gave to you, maybe you could say something like, upon reflection, when we finished, we did a big debrief and we decided to continue the customer service survey so that we could get some real-time data in terms of what was going on in our stores. So it's just showing that you're thinking of things beyond the immediate, demonstrating strategic vision and operational excellence. So this is STAR with an extra R, how we kind of structure our interview answers to make sure that we're giving all the information that your interviewers are going to want to see. All right, so in the beginning, I told you there was 3 things that we want to be seeing. I'm going to come back to that slide when we go into interviews. Now, the second one is fit the spec, and that's why I'm showing you this lovely image of someone having their suit fitted. Now, every role in every company is going to have certain things that you need to fit into outside of can you do the job? The first one is, do you actually want this role that we have on offer? Do you really want to come and do that? Because again, if you think about it from their perspective, from my shoes, if I hire you, that's on me. That's my reputation, okay? So we want you to do well. We want you to stay. So you do need to try and demonstrate when you're in your interview that you do actually want what they're offering you. And how you can do that is in the LF section or the looking for section. And normally that comes at the end, doesn't it? When they sort of sell you a little bit about their role and then they ask you what they're looking for. So you can be honest, but aligned to what they have on the table. So make that match for them. Secondly is, can we afford you? Now, I think many people struggle with salary negotiation. And honestly speaking, this could be an entire class on its own. So maybe I should do that as a full session. But in summary, what I would suggest to you is that it's a little bit like a card game or poker. You don't necessarily want to show your hand before you've got some information from them. Try and keep it focused to your salary expectation. They don't necessarily need to know what you've gotten paid before, because why should that dictate the new salary? Salary should be aligned to the role you're doing. Now, I know you'll be saying, but it's not that easy. We have to tell them. Sometimes you are going to have to tell them, but it's a negotiation, okay? Sometimes a negotiation is uncomfortable, but you have to be able to do it in a way that doesn't alienate or push, flexibility, but standing your ground. So note to self, I'll do a proper session on this separately. And then in terms also of this final bit of second bit of the fitting the spec, I want you to have a think about this, considering a holistic RFJ. And you'll be thinking, what's an RFJ? It's a recruiting acronym, reason for joining. So when I was talking to my very senior recruitment leader this week who works for big luxury brand here in the region, they were saying to me that because of the company they work in, people are very keen to tell them about how much they want to go and work for that particular company. But this is very surface level, this is very basic, and it's not going to differentiate you from anybody else. So ideally, the difference here is to concentrate on the role you're going into, the team, not just the shiny company. And again, it's an extra chance to impress. So if you can find out a project, a system implementation, something happening that you can reference and use, this is going to look super good. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm a supply chain person interviewing at Amazon. So I could really easily say, oh, I really want to work at Amazon. It's such a good company, blah, blah, blah. But if I take a step back and I say something like, oh, I see you guys have just opened up a new distribution center in Riyadh, and this is something similar we did at my previous company. So I'd love to understand the challenges that you've had, because for us, RPA was our biggest weakness. Totally different, isn't it? Just to going Amazon, Amazon, Amazon. Shows an understanding of the industry, of the role, and a genuine interest. And I think you'll find nuggets of information anywhere, LinkedIn, people that might be working there, etc. Now, this next section I'm going to caveat heavily because whether we like it or not is happening. And my background is HR, so I'm very mindful of these things. So what I am not talking about is removing bias or removing process and just recruiting people that we like. It's not about that at all, but we have to acknowledge that there is a large part of what's going on in an interview being centered around, can I work with this person? And do I even want to work with this person? Okay. I will add vice versa because interviews are a two-way street and you should be assessing them just as much as they're assessing you. But again, I've got 3 takeaways for you to do differently or do more of as you move along your interviews. Now, are your values aligned to their values? The reason that that's important is because if it's a match, this is where you will thrive. So they're looking to understand how you're going to operate if you come and work with them. My advice is be clever and weave them in somewhere else in the interview. So maybe in your star part. For example, if a company's values on their careers website are honesty, transparency, and innovation, use those exact words during your star structure. Use the word innovate, use the word honest, use the word transparency, because they'll start to make these matches subconsciously. It doesn't work very well when they say, you know, what kind of environments do you like? What are your values, that you just repeat what's on their website. It's very, you can see straight through that. All right, make a positive impression. Now, I think you're probably going, yeah, of course we want to do that. But there's ways to do that. And I think people often forget how important they are. So how you show up really matters. It is important to at least a little bit match your audience. Maybe it's a very serious person. Maybe it's someone that's a bit more high energy. But ideally, you should try and match a little bit pace, energy, and tone of that person because it builds the likability factor. Body language counts, some smiling, some nodding, these non-verbal cues helps. And apparently, if people can see your palms, at some point in a conversation, they trust you more. So having a laptop at a distance that people can see you use your arms is going to help you. I used to have a manager that asked the receptionist how the candidate interacted with them to understand if they were putting on their best face for an interview or if it was a genuine character that they were seeing. So bear in mind that, you know, that assessment is sort of happening right from any email going on to your HR team or management team through to the end. And then my final little nugget on this part is really to think about who you're meeting. And if you do go and work there and get their job, what that working relationship will be and pitch yourself accordingly. So what I mean by this is if you're meeting with the HR person, think about how the role is going to interact with them. So probably I'm looking for like, can you work cross-functionally? Will it be collaborative? Can I trust you to keep things confidential, for example? If your interview is then with your line manager, they're going to be your boss, aren't they? So often bosses are looking for somebody that can support them with their work, it's going to match with their leadership style, it's going to make them look good, that they can trust, excuse me, in front of their clients or their leadership. So again, you want to try and position yourself and answer in ways that they go, oh yeah, fine, I can put him in front of our leadership and it'll be okay. And same, if you get to that final round and you go in and you meet maybe a C-suite person, how they're going to be interacting with you is probably quite concise. They're going to want the right level of information, maybe the insights. So that level of detail that you need to share with them is very different to if you were just talking to your manager. Now, I skipped a slide because I wanted to come back to it. So these were the hints and tips that my general manager and recruitment director of one of the biggest brands in the region gave me just this week. So these are hot off the press. Again, you're going to read it and think, I've seen it all before, but I'm going to tell you why you need to revisit. You need to be specific. I asked somebody just last week, tell me about a time when you dealt with underperformance. And they said, oh yeah, I do that all the time. We do written warnings, we do a personal development plan, and sometimes we need to exit people. Now, what they said is correct. You probably are going to do those things. But what it did not tell me was if they had done it before. It was all very theoretical. So you do need to give very specific examples in interviews. Do structure your responses. I've talked about STAR quite a lot. You need to remember all the parts of STAR, and in particular the results and highlighting your achievements. And as I said, many forget this part. Don't ramble. So this does happen quite a lot. People are nervous and so they just start talking and suddenly we're there 7 minutes later. And often when they ramble, they start looking around. So they miss the opportunity to read the room and see the face of the person interviewing them, getting less and less engaged. So if you are on a virtual call, make sure you are looking at them and you're seeing kind of what's going on. You can always check in and say, have I answered your question? I can definitely give you more information if needed. Okay. Now, don't make excuses. This was a real pet hate of mine. If you haven't done something, that is totally fine. I would rather you said, that's not something I've got lots of experience in. Maybe I could suggest this task I've done as a transferable skill, but don't start saying I'm a quick learner and I can pick it up really quickly. This is something that will immediately disengage somebody, because at the end, it's not your decision whether they take you through or not, okay? It's their decision. So you need to position that very carefully with people. And then finally, don't forget the context. So bring the interviewer into your frame of reference. You know your company inside out and the structure and the nuances, but they don't. So it will be clever to highlight certain things, particularly if they are aligned with the type of company you're going for. For example, if you've worked in a startup environment, maybe that will really support in a fast-paced, dynamic, flat structure, so you can start to talk about that. But if you don't reference it and just jump into your actions, they're never going to be able to make that link. Okay, so we are pretty much coming towards the end. I want to do two final things. They're super quick. If you've ever been to my training sessions before, I always think it's really important to consider mindset, because we can practice and get great at the skill of interviewing, but still I see it when people come to a real life interview, it can be stressful. And people ask me, oh, what do I do with my anxiety? I feel really nervous. How do I cope with that? A few tips here for you. So treat interviews like conversations between two people that might be becoming colleagues. So this is not about a hierarchical thing. It's about putting yourself on the level. It takes the power imbalance out of it. Preparing stories, not scripts. So scripts you can learn, They're very ineffective. You can spot them a mile away when somebody just comes and just blurts out everything that they know. It's not helpful, doesn't answer the question. And in a really intense moment, you forget it. So it's much better to have your stories ready or your stars, as we looked at, that you can then use to answer whichever question might come in. Try going in with a curiosity mindset. So the approach should be, let's see if it's a mutual fit. Is this also good for me? And what can I uncover? People like to talk about themselves as well. So make sure that you build that into your practice, because it builds a lot of likability factor again. And then finally, I don't know if people have or have not heard this term, but put my psychology hat on. There is a type of stress that's good and helpful. So I'm not talking overwhelming stress, but it's that little bit of butterflies in your stomach, a little burst of energy and adrenaline that's okay. If you've ever been on stage, it's that kind of feeling. So you're not going to get rid of nerves, but what you can do is get them all pointed in the right direction and working for you through preparation and mindset so that you can really succeed at your interviews. Now, pitfalls. I asked everybody what question they struggled with the most, and they said this one, tell me about yourself. I think people don't understand the point of this question. So I remember having one person talking for 20 minutes on this question and gave me everything to do with their entire history. This should be no more than 2 minutes. It's an icebreaker. It's just to get the conversation flowing. And if you remember at the beginning of this session, I gave you an introduction about me that I would say would be a pretty good place to start if you're just structuring a little bit about you. So maybe it's a sentence or two on your overall experience, how many years, maybe what locations or industries you've worked across. You can also sprinkle a little bit about you there. Maybe you have a family, maybe you've just relocated. I talked about being a lifelong geek. So there's things you can add in. What you're looking for, make sure it matches what they are offering. What questions do you have for us? Again, this is a spot people fail at. So don't start asking about time off or benefits. There's a place and time for that for sure. But they are going to read a lot into the types of questions that you are actually asking. How is this person thinking? So questions like, what do you like about working here? What do I need to know about working here? What does good look like? What are your key challenges that you're looking to solve in the next 6 to 12 months? These are good questions. Don't look back in anger. Again, serious red flag when people start to talk badly about previous employers and people. It happens more than you think. It's a very negative way to talk. Keep it forward focused. Embrace the gaps. Gaps are fine. Life happens. It's how you position it. For example, finished up my role at Apple a couple of months ago, took some time out to reset, and I've just gone back into the job market to look for my next opportunity. That's very different to, oh, I lost my job a couple of months ago and I've been looking and I've had no luck. Okay. So it's that subtle messaging that you need to get right. And then finally, don't make the interview itself the practice. So practice makes perfect. We don't need perfect, but what it gives you is confidence. Okay. So take opportunities when you can to practice and learn the skill of interviewing. That does bring us to the end. I did mention that I have something that I do work with people on. So this is a mock interview session. It's an hour. It's a little bit like a role play. It can be aligned to an actual JD that you might have. So we can craft actual answers to that. And I'm offering it 30% off for the next few days until the end of this week, but you can use it any time in the next 6 months.